Hi, everyone. Hi, Carla. Can you hear me?
Hi,
Oh, brilliant. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Um,
thank you for having me.
Thank you. It's lovely to meet you. We haven't met. My name is Rogan. Um, we have a full house here for you tonight, who you can't see, but they'll have some questions for you
Mhm.
shortly. They've just seen the film. I wanted to start by acknowledging your career as an editor and that this is, in fact, your directorial debut. How did this project begin, and did you always have Frida in mind as the right subject for you to make your debut?
So right before, I actually never planned to go into directing. I was very happy to, be part of the creative process through editing. And it was this project really and seeing kind of like the possibilities of bringing Frida's voice to life that made me want to jump in and lead the team that we put together to do this film. So yeah, it was pretty much the story that told me I needed to do this. And as many people in the world, probably millions of people in the world, I became very obsessed with Frida when I was a young woman in college. And I saw a painting of hers. It was the first painting that I saw of Frida in between America. And it's a painting that is in the film in between America and Mexico. And I was a new immigrant in America. So I really felt that she was like capturing my emotions at the time. And I was like, who is this woman? I have to see more. And throughout the years, I always like very intimately connected to the experiences and the emotions that she was painting about. They were very personal. It was her face in all of these self portraits, but I really saw myself reflected on those paintings. So that's kind of like when the obsession began. And then this opportunity came up to tell her story. So I had to do it.
Brilliant, thank you. Something that I really loved about the film is that you didn't shy away from Frida's politics and her communism. Nothing was glossed over in that respect. And since her death, her image and her paintings have often been divorced from the context of her life, and
Oh, mhm.
people tend to experience them without knowing, anything, or experience her face. She's such an icon, without knowing about her. And I'm curious to know, how important was it for you to reassert her beliefs when making this film?
It was crucial for us as we were doing research, and also I knew a lot about her life, but it was really crucial to really understand or get a sense of you know who she became because of where she came from. And so it wasn't, like her young memories of the revolution really marked her, right? And this idea, I mean, the revolution in Mexico in the 1910s was such a big um, exploration of justice and also racial exploration and going back to like thinking about indigenous roots with pride, which wasn't happening in Latin America. So and it was a peasant revolution. It was they were looking for land reform and the social economic gap was so huge at the time. It's still very huge now, but that's where her sense of justice came from. And to us, like we just could not get into her life without really kind of like understanding the world that inspired her. And after the revolution, as a young woman, she became, incredibly involved with the Communist Party in Mexico. And one really great thing is that we're still kind of seeing the consequences of that decision because it's my dog. I can visit us for a bit, but both Diego and Frida, were big communists, and they believe that art really needed to have a direct conversation with people and to be, of the people, about the people, and for the people. That was, the muralist movement. So when Frida died, Diego actually gifted all of her work and his work and also all of her writings to the people of Mexico. So it's actually the people of Mexico, that's the idea. They own Frida and Diego. So for all the rights and licenses, we had to go to the government of Mexico to get that copyright.
Brilliant. I didn't know that. That's really incredible.
Mhm.
And it leads into my other question, which is just specifically about the archive footage. I mean, maybe it was my own ignorance, but I was surprised just at how much moving Frida I saw beyond her paintings. What was the process like obtaining that? Was it difficult? Did that also sit with the state, or how much did you have to work with?
So the people of Mexico owns the copyright of her art and her writings, but then you have to go to the different sources to obtain, like to actually get the copies. And then, there's an extra permission to be able to show things. So with, a lot of, I mean, she actually, there's no recordings of Frida of her voice, but there's a lot of photographs, and there's, you know, more than for other people, there's some film of her. It was, at the time where, like, there weren't really like personal films or family films that happened. She happened to, be born in a house where, the main provider, her father, was a photographer. So there is a record of her childhood and her, teenage years that, nobody in Mexico really had a visual record of it. I would say we probably used as, every single frame of her in film. Maybe not every single frame, but like we used pretty much all the film that is out there of Frida. Some of them were owned by collections that, it just took a little bit more of an involved process to get permission and to be able to license that film. But we went for all of it. Sadly, sadly, there are some sources in Mexico that don't make their archives available, especially a couple of networks in Mexico, which I think happens all throughout. I don't know how many filmmakers you have in your audience, but that's a challenge that filmmakers are, having to deal over and over again in these days, that, we don't have access to the historical record all the time because people are getting very protective of that record. So there was the footage of her funeral that, thank goodness, we never wanted to use it in the film because the film was so centered in her voice. When she died, then we were going to see her funeral through the eyes of others, and that was not what our film was about. But it's very sad that people have no access to that footage, for example. Like they're not able to, it's not even licensable. So, so that's the state of archival access that we're dealing with at this point.
Yeah, I mean, you did such a wonderful job. Like I said, I was shocked at how much moving Frida I got to see, and it's a real shame that, yeah, not all archivists have the same approach to.
I know it's really difficult because it's our history, and we want to like rethink about our history and present it in films. And to me, archival is just such a gift of like rediscovering stories in a personal, intimate way. But yeah, I love archival.
Um, there are some, well, we've touched on the politics, but there are profoundly heavy moments in Frida's life, again, that you don't shy away from, and of course neither did her work. But when you watch the film, there's such a fluidity to it that the film doesn't stop for those moments. It keeps pace, and I imagine I feel that that's largely in part to the animation. Could you
Mhm.
talk about your choice to animate Frida's paintings for this film?
Yeah, so it was a bold choice, and we knew that it was bold from the moment we thought about it. And we actually thought about it at the very beginning of the film, even when we were pitching the story to find partners to support our project. Um, but to me, it was incredibly obvious for two reasons, really. We were looking for a way to be able to present through archival the world that surrounded Frida, but how do we get into her heart? Like, I kept thinking about this image of like, how do we get the audience to actually like jump in, dive into the water of Frida's inner world? Like that's how I thought about it. And to me, we needed to guide, as the audience was swimming in her thoughts and her emotions, we needed to guide the audience to pay attention to the emotions we wanted to highlight in the paintings. So animation was for us kind of like the best tool that we can think of to be able to guide the audience through, these paintings that are so kind of vibrant, and they have so much like emotional content and information, to be able to make, again, also make that connection between her inner world, which was the paintings, and the lived experiences that those paintings were touching on. So that kind of was the approach from the beginning. We never added external elements to the paintings. What we did was scan the paintings very carefully, and then we sometimes separated the paintings or added some motion to the paintings, so that, again, we could really focus our viewers' eyes into that moment, the beating heart, the pain, like the delicate, like, bleeding vein that she cuts off. And then I also kept thinking about, my own experience with art. I'm a big museum goer, and I just have these conversations with a lot of paintings that really attract me. Sometimes they're just like, the color just calls me in. And I thought a lot about that experience and how we can, have this interaction with paintings, because we can sit in front of the paintings and observe it, and, again, like, pay attention to different things. But here we are bringing in that art into a cinematic universe where you have a story that is moving forward. So for us, animation gave us, an opportunity to actually offer that same relationship between art and viewers, but also, be able to kind of like bring it to life in this cinematic space.
Thank you. There's one more question from me, and then I'll open to the audience. So I hope you're thinking. When you approach this project, and it's interesting to know that you didn't really have any ambitions to be a director, but when you approached Frida as a subject, did you kind of have in your mind potentially that you had to rectify any narratives that existed about Frida or have existed in the kind of wider public imagination?
That's a great question. The way that I would put it is that we felt both a responsibility and an excitement to take this iconic symbol. Like, she's become this one image of, feminist empowerment, or of queer pride, or also like visibility for people with disabilities. And but in that process, sometimes people become those symbols. Symbols are big images. Sometimes they're we kind of like take away the humanity and the complexity of those people, and our responsibility was to really kind of bring that back. I mean, the choice of letting Frida tell her own story, and she really took over. So we thought that we were going to have to rely on other people's voices a lot more, but then we just were guided by her strong feelings, and hearing that texture of her personality. So for us, it was a way to get so close to her, so that we could see and feel and hear her messiness, and not only this, like, empower, maybe blunt woman, but also her fragility, and really kind of really understand where the pain came from, right? Or even her self-hate or her insecurities. And I think I said this to somebody last night, but that really made me love her more, because this is how we all are. We're present in such a curated way to others, or in social media, right? But she both really show herself in her paintings, and being able to listen to her voice, like, it really, hopefully we presented a very layered, very complex, very complete, woman, character, and seeing her, ups and downs and stuff that maybe I didn't like so much about her, or like that I loved, like her swearing and like calling people's names, to present that. Like, I hope that it would bring people closer to her, and not only see her as this symbol.
Yeah, Thank you. I personally think he did a wonderful job of that.
Thank you.
I'll see. Yeah, brilliant. We have a question just here.
Thank you very much. That was a great documentary, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really interesting the emphasis that you put on the relationship between her and Diego. I had no idea it was quite so abusive, and I was really quite surprised that she remarried him. Does that surprise you?
Yes and no. I mean, I actually went into the research knowing that she had remarried him, but I didn't know much about the conditions that she placed on the remarriage. But it was very clear that there was a codependency. I mean, she was painting about Diego like carrying him as a mom, right? And we have this, kind of like the most productive years and the calmest years, she's still really kind of taking care of him as a mother. And with Diego and the conflicts that they had, and the obsession that they had for each other as well, and the codependency, there was also support. There's a big line that we really wanted to make sure was in the film, of him kind of like saying no, after her miscarriage, like, no, give her a book, she's gonna do something great with this, she's gonna make art. So he identified what Frida got out of painting, and in a way supported that, and supported her economically through a lot of hardships because her physical issues were very expensive. And he really took care of her through that, which makes marriages very complicated, right? And the gender dynamics are very complicated, and she addresses that in the film. But yeah, I mean, there were some details that surprised me. The one thing that we wanted to make sure that people took away from it as well is to really kind of understand the attraction between these two people. That the electricity that they had for each other, that was important as much as like going through the harsh parts of the relationship, that you also understood why Frida loved him so much and why she was so attracted to him sexually.
Thank you. I think we had one just in the front.
Thanks. Really, I just want to congratulate you on this film. I think it's completely brilliant in the balance, in the balance that you've caught between the seriousness of her relationship with Diego, the excitement of New York, the Paris, back to New York, and the lovers and all this sort of thing. But one of the things I saw when I went to see Frida Kahlo at the Tate Modern was that she really, really, really could paint. She was a painter like Holbein. And the brilliant thing that you've managed to do is, despite the graphics, which I think are visually attractive and engaging, you didn't take away from the graphics of her, the reality of her wonderful ability just simply to paint. So I just think it was wonderful. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
No question. I would like them to give you full access to the funeral and have a codicil. That would be only fair.
Yeah, because she was, her art was not, as you get a sense in the film, her last exhibition was done mostly as kind of a token of love for her as she was leaving the community, right? She was well known in Mexico in a way as a celebrity, as a figure, as the wife of Diego Rivera. She was very present in the Bohemian community in Mexico. So her funeral was like incredibly well attended. It was like, somebody really important in the country dying, but her art wasn't that well known. And a lot of people that actually bought her paintings were as a favor to Diego. That's one detail that that we do not have in the film, but that was the case. Like after she died, there was one filmmaking couple that made a film that came out in 1975. I might not be getting the date right, but we went to them. They're still in San Francisco, and they gave us all these original tapes of interviews that they had done back then with people that knew Frida. And one of the things that we found out through them is that at the time when they were making that film, which was, in the 70s, they had to search and try to find out who owned Frida's paintings, because people didn't really know. They were in personal collections that like nobody knew who actually had a painting. I believe it was either the MoMA or the Museum of Modern Art in San Francisco owned a painting at the time of Frida, but they had never exhibited it. They had never shown it. It was only in the vaults in their basement. So we found out that it was very much the 70s women's movement and universities and women's studies departments that were being born at the time that kind of like discovered her and brought her to the forefront of the art world, which is really interesting, right? Yeah, so that's how we came to really learn about her.
That's incredible. We had one question just down here. Oh, you've got the mic. Okay, and then...
Hello. Can you hear me? Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. That was an incredibly beautiful film. And I love the music soundtrack and the way you phased it out. I thought it was absolutely gorgeous. Can I ask you about one painting that has always fascinated me? It's the one of her in a suit, sitting down, cutting her hair. Her hair was so incredibly beautiful, and it seemed to be part of her. Did she actually cut her hair? And did she cut it, if she did, because she was so angry with Diego? So did she cut it because he loved it, and therefore she was trying to punish him?
Yes, she did. I mean, he really loved how she looked in traditional dress, and part of the traditional dress is, the hair, the headsets with the flowers or the trenzas, like, there's a way of like braiding your hair with ribbons in Mexico and then putting them up. So that was very much part of the kind of like the visual identity that she created for herself throughout the years. I personally think it was a combination of kind of like a punishment towards Diego, a detachment. But I also think it was, she just needed to kind of like, let go of something. I don't know if this has happened to many people over there, but I've cut my hair after a breakup. Yes. But actually reading the letters of, that she wrote to friends right when that affair was happening between Diego and her sister, we were actually kind of surprised to see how much kind of self-hate, we have in the film, her talking about like, I'm just a girl, like with a man that is, leaving me for somebody else. Like, I hate myself. Like, I don't do anything right. I don't, I can't do anything. And I think that that's something, that a lot of us experience through heartbreak. Is it me? Am I worth it? Am I enough? And there's a lot of like, we go into a lot of like self-hate, of questioning our worth. And I think that was part of also kind of like, the cutting of the hair, like that was very much present. And we wanted to include that in the film, in her emotions, in the letters at that time. Always kind of like bringing herself down and being like, well, it's my fault. Like, I'm not loved. I cannot be loved. Like, I'm not worth it. So, yeah. But she did cut her hair. I hope it was kind of clear, but there are photos around that time where, I mean, it's a little, I guess, maybe hard to see, but there were pictures of her with her hair short and even wearing the same little jacket that we see in a painting, like, later on, again, with her hair short and that same jacket, which I thought having the photo and then the painting against each other was just, very powerful.
They say thank you. We've got a question just here, and then I think this one will be the last ones.
Hi. Thank you so much for this documentary. It was super delicate, and it made me appreciate and fall in love with Frida even more. And I'm just very curious because, you know, you've done so much research and you went through her life and her intimate moments and her diary. If Frida was alive today, what would you like to ask her?
Oh my goodness. I would actually love to ask her what she thinks about who she's become to us. Because, I mean, we have that quote at the end where she says, like, when I die, you know, I want to be the big caca of the world. And also there was her friend, the friend that you hear during the miscarriage that was there when, you know, that witnessed that miscarriage that night. There was an interview with her where she also said, you know, if Frida, you know, could see how we see her now, like the symbol that she's become, I think she would love it. That she would think, you know, the way she put it is just like Frida always wanted to be the big cheese. So I think she would really enjoy it. And I think that, yeah, I would want to know, you know, what she feels about what impact she's had on a lot of us, what, you know, what her art has been able to do, especially because she experienced, you know, kind of like a reaction. I mean, she was told not to paint so many sad things, and the sad things were her. She was painting herself. She was painting her personal space, or, you know, or, you know, there's some paintings of hers that are very literal and you know, very raw. There was pushback, like there was a shock value, not shock value, but like a shocked response to them, and critics talked about that. So, you know, so I really wish I could talk to her about, you know, what's happened since she left us and how she would feel about it.
That's a wonderful question. We have time for just one more, I'm afraid.
Thank you. Hi. I know that you also, obviously in a different capacity as not director, but you worked on the RBG film. I'm curious how different your approach was with this film versus that film, because obviously this film you're looking at a historical subject who is very much so no longer alive, but at the time that you were working on the RBG film, she was very much so alive, kind of how that affected your personal approach going into the project and telling someone's story.
So some of it is similar because actually with RBG and we have an interview with her and we have moments with her in verite. But we actually didn't get that interview until very, very late. So we had a version of the film where we were just using archival voice from her in, you know, previous interviews to do that. And a lot of that film also happens in the past. I think for everything that I've worked on is, you know, is really kind of finding a way to tell the story that feels intimate, without relying on just, you know, telling people's life, like step by step, like what has happened in their lives, like what are all the facts that you could share about, you know, like the Wikipedia page of those people. But what I'm attracted to is, you know, what is the emotional narrative? Like, how do we present? I mean, for Frida, for example, the way that I always thought about her is, here's a woman that could not contain her voice, right? And did not allow the culture or the society around her to contain her either. And you know, hoping that you, the audience, take, you know, kind of that from the film, that like, to have that expression, cathartic expression, for her, it was her creative expression, you know, to talk about with all honesty about what happens in our internal lives is a really good thing. It's, you know, I mean, I guess therapy, and we have to look for outlets to be able to do that in honest ways, right? So yeah, I mean, it's all about finding the intimacy with somebody and what can we, you know, learn from their lives or be inspired. How can we be inspired by them? And then different films will want to do different things or will have different material. So then you adapt.
Thank you so much, Carla. You've been wonderful to talk to. It's been a whole other education in itself. Thank you from everyone in here as well.
I wish I could see you guys. I can't. But
I'm sorry, you're sellotaped down. I can't turn you around. I'm sorry.
that's okay. Send me a picture, somebody.
Yeah, I can do. But the film is released on Friday in the UK, so tell a friend. And it was on streaming the following week on the 14th. But cinema experience. Spread the good word of FRIDA. And Carla, thank you so much again for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Have a lovely night.
Thank you.